My name is Dan Foster, and 42 years ago, I made the mistake of being born believing in fairy tales. Not the kind with dragons and princesses, but the American dream variety where hard work, loyalty, and treating people right actually means something. Where a guy who builds his electrical contracting business from nothing, who pays his taxes and loves his family, gets to keep what he earns. I should have read the fine print. Dan, you're not listening to me. Maya's voice cut through my morning coffee like a buzzsaw through copper wire. She stood in our granite-countered kitchen, perfectly put together even at 7 a.m., her blonde hair styled like she was heading to a photo shoot instead of dropping our daughters at school. I heard every word, I said, though honestly, I'd tuned out somewhere around her complaint about the pool maintenance guy. You want to fire Tommy because he doesn't wear designer work clothes. That's not what I said. She grabbed her phone, already checking her Instagram notifications. I said his appearance reflects poorly on our image. My followers expect a certain standard. Our image. Her followers. When did my wife start talking like a corporate marketing department? Tommy's been cleaning pools for 15 years. He does good work. Good isn't good enough anymore, Dan. She didn't look up from her screen. We're not the same people we were when you started Foster Electric in that ratty apartment. She was right about that. Back then, Maya had been excited about every small victory, every new contract I landed. She'd celebrated when I bought my first work truck, when we moved out of that apartment into our first real house. Now we lived in a 4,000-square-foot monument to success, complete with a 3-car garage and a pool that apparently required photogenic maintenance staff. Dad, can you drive us today? Ella, my 15-year-old, bounded into the kitchen with her backpack. Mom's car smells like that expensive perfume again. It's called quality fragrance, Maya snapped. And yes, your father can drive you. I have a meeting. Another meeting. Maya seemed to have more meetings than a Fortune 500 CEO these days, though I couldn't figure out what business she was actually conducting. Her Instagram account had grown to 50,000 followers, something about lifestyle inspiration, but the money coming in barely covered her monthly shopping budget. What kind of meeting? I asked. Networking. Building the brand. She kissed the air near my cheek, careful not to disturb her makeup. Don't wait up. These things run late. After Maya left in her white BMW, the one I'd bought her for their 38th birthday, I drove Ella and her younger sister Sophie to school. The girls chattered about their upcoming soccer season, their friends, normal teenage concerns, real concerns, not whatever manufactured drama Maya's social media world had created. Dad, Sophie said as we pulled up to the school, is Mom okay? She seems different lately. Different. That was one way to put it. Maya had always been ambitious, always wanted more than our middle-class beginning could offer. I'd worked 16-hour days to give it to her, building Foster Electric from a one-man operation to a company with 12 employees and contracts all over the state. Every upgrade to our lifestyle had been earned with calloused hands and late nights. But somewhere along the way, Maya had stopped seeing the work behind the rewards. She'd started taking our success for granted, started acting like she deserved luxury simply for existing. She's just busy with her projects, I told Sophie. You know how your mom gets when she's focused on something. That afternoon, I was reviewing invoices in my office when my brother Rick stopped by. Rick handled the business side of Foster Electric while I managed the actual electrical work. He was 4 years older, smoother with clients, better at the networking Maya was always talking about. You look like hell, Rick said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Thanks for the pep talk. Seriously, what's eating you? The Henderson contract came through, the Morrison project is ahead of schedule. Business is good. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Business was great, actually. We'd just landed our biggest contract yet, rewiring a new shopping complex downtown. The kind of job that would set us up for years. But success felt hollow when your wife treated you like an ATM with a pulse. Maya wants to redecorate the house again, I said. Apparently our furniture isn't Instagram-worthy anymore. Rick laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Jennifer's been on a similar kick. Professional concern about potential workplace harassment and misuse of company resources. I included documentation of their trips, cross-referenced with company calendar events that Chaz had supposedly been attending. My finger hovered over the send buttons. Once I pressed them, there would be no going back. Victoria's carefully constructed double life would crumble. Chaz's reputation would take a hit. Their little fantasy world would come crashing down. I thought about all those nights I'd worked alone in the coffee shop, wondering why my wife never seemed interested in helping build our life together. All those times she'd rolled her eyes at my small-town ambitions while secretly planning her escape to bigger, more expensive things. All those lies. I pressed send on both emails. Then I sat back in my chair and smiled for the first time in months. Not a happy smile, something sharper, more satisfied. "Checkmate, darling," I whispered to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzed with another text from Ray. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. These rich guys don't play fair." I typed back, "Neither do I. Not anymore." The house was quiet except for Victoria's soft snoring upstairs. In a few hours, she'd wake up and check her phone, probably expecting messages from her lover about their next adventure. Instead, she'd find her world starting to unravel. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat at the kitchen table, planning my next move. This was just the opening gambit. Victoria and Chaz had been playing a game they thought I didn't know about. Now they were about to learn that I'd been studying the rules all along. The first sign that my missiles had found their targets came at 7:30 the next morning. Victoria's phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. She stumbled downstairs in her silk robe, hair disheveled, squinting at the screen with growing alarm. "What the hell?" she muttered, scrolling frantically. I sat at the kitchen counter, calmly eating toast and reading the local news blog on my laptop. The headline made me smile. Local executives' yacht parties under scrutiny after anonymous tip. "Problem, honey?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. Victoria's face had gone pale. Someone leaked photos of the company retreat. They're making it look like something it wasn't." "Company retreat?" I took another bite of toast. "I thought you said it was a sales conference in Albany." She shot me a sharp look. "It was both. A combined event. You know how these corporate things work." I nodded sympathetically. Must be frustrating when people take things out of context. What kind of photos? Victoria's phone rang before she could answer. She glanced at the screen and her face went even whiter. "It's Chaz. Mr. Loring." "Better take it," I said. "Sounds important." She answered with forced cheerfulness. "Good morning, Charles. Yes, I saw the article. No, I have no idea how they got those photos. They must have been taken out of context." I couldn't hear his response, but Victoria's expression told me everything. Her carefully constructed world was starting to crack. "I understand your concern," she continued, pacing toward the living room. "Maybe we should meet to discuss damage control strategies." After she hung up, Victoria stood in our hallway for a long moment, staring at her phone. When she finally returned to the kitchen, her demeanor had shifted. The panic was being replaced by something harder. "This is sabotage," she announced. "Someone is deliberately trying to hurt my career." "Any idea who?" I asked, refilling my coffee cup. "Probably one of the other sales reps. Jennifer's always been jealous of my relationship with management, or maybe that witch Sasha finally showed her true colors." Interesting. Victoria's first instinct was to blame other women rather than consider that her own behavior might have consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Doc, my old editor who'd transitioned into freelance tech consulting. Saw the article. Nice work. Need any help with the follow-up? I typed back, "Stand by. This is just the opening act." Victoria spent the next hour on her phone, doing damage control. I listened from the kitchen as she spun increasingly elaborate explanations to various colleagues and friends. The photos were misleading. The blogger was unreliable. The whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But I could hear the strain in her voice. The careful confidence she usually projected was cracking. Around noon, she left for the office, claiming she needed to handle this situation professionally. I waited until her car disappeared down our street, then called Doc. "How's your hacking these days?" I asked when he picked up. "I prefer digital investigation," Doc replied. The screen opened to reveal a browser full of tabs: Instagram, Facebook, some shopping sites, and something called Elite Connections. Elite Connections turned out to be a high-end networking platform for ambitious professionals seeking meaningful opportunities. Maya's profile showed photos I'd never seen before. Professional headshots that must have cost a fortune, descriptions of her lifestyle brand, and influence marketing expertise. According to her profile, she was available for collaborative ventures and strategic partnerships. The messaging section made my stomach clench. Dozens of conversations with men whose profile photos screamed money. Expensive watches, luxury cars, penthouse backgrounds. The messages were carefully worded, dancing around direct propositions, but the subtext was clear enough. One conversation stood out. A man named Victor Grant, whose profile listed him as a real estate investment specialist with properties across 3 states. His messages to Maya were more frequent, more familiar than the others. Looking forward to our next strategy session, the suite at the Riverside Hotel worked perfectly for our last collaboration. Your insights on market positioning were invaluable. Dinner at Chez Laurent was just the beginning. You understand ambition in a way most people don't. Finally, someone who gets it. I scrolled through weeks of messages, watching my wife's digital affair unfold in corporate doublespeak. They weren't just meeting for business dinners. Victor was paying for Maya's consulting services through a series of transfers that looked legitimate on the surface, but added up to more than most people made in a year. My phone rang, Rick's name on the caller ID. "Dan, you need to get down to the Morrison site. We've got a problem." The Morrison project was our bread and butter, a complete electrical retrofit of a historic office building, the kind of job that built reputations and bank accounts. I grabbed my tools and headed out, grateful for the distraction of honest work. The problem turned out to be a miscommunication with the general contractor about wire specifications. Nothing that couldn't be fixed, but it required 3 hours of rewiring and a tense conversation about change orders. By the time I got back to the office, it was late afternoon. Rick was waiting with coffee and a grim expression. "Jennifer did some more reconnaissance," he said. "Your wife's been busy." He handed me his phone, showing a Facebook post from his wife's account. Jennifer had been at the Riverside Hotel for a charity luncheon and spotted Maya in the lobby. The photo showed Maya walking toward the elevators with a tall man in an expensive suit. They weren't holding hands, but their body language suggested intimacy. "That's him," Rick said, "the guy from the wine bar." I studied the photo. Victor Grant looked exactly like his profile picture: silver hair, confident posture, the kind of man who'd never worked with his hands, but somehow accumulated more wealth than people who did. He was older than me, probably pushing 50, with the polished appearance that money could buy. "There's more," Rick continued. Jennifer asked around. "This guy Victor owns half the commercial real estate downtown. Word is he's got a reputation for mixing business with pleasure." Meaning? Meaning he's been married 3 times, and each divorce was expensive. Apparently he has a type: attractive women who want more than their current situation can provide. The pieces were clicking together like components in a circuit diagram. Maya's sudden interest in networking, Her expensive new wardrobe, the mysterious meetings and late nights. She hadn't just found someone else. She'd found someone who could offer her the lifestyle upgrade she'd been craving. "What are you going to do?" Rick asked. Good question. The old Dan Foster would have confronted Maya directly, demanded explanations, tried to work things out through honest conversation. But the old Dan Foster hadn't realized his wife was running a side business that made his 20 years of hard work look like pocket change. "I'm going to gather more information," I said. "If Maya wants to play games, she's about to discover that electricians are pretty good at tracing circuits." That evening, I acted normal. Asked about Maya's day, listened to her vague responses about productive meetings and exciting opportunities. She was getting better at lying. I had to give her credit. If I hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed her enthusiasm was genuine. After dinner, while Maya was upstairs doing her elaborate skincare routine, I made my own social media reconnaissance. Victor Grant's Instagram account was public, probably for business reasons. Lots of photos of luxury properties, expensive restaurants, charity events where he posed with local politicians and business leaders. "Hope you backed up all those fake review accounts." Trevor stared at his destroyed phone, then looked up at me with genuine fear in his eyes. "You're crazy." "No, Trevor, I'm motivated. There's a difference." I stepped closer until he was pressed against his car door. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to clean up this mess, and you're going to stay out of my way. Because if I have to come find you again, I won't be nearly this polite." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing next to his car, holding the pieces of his broken phone. As I drove home, my own phone rang. Victoria calling from her office. "Ben, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Someone's been harassing Trevor from my office. He thinks it might be connected to the blog article." "Really? What kind of harassment?" "Threatening him, destroying his property. This has gone too far." I pulled into our driveway and sat in the dark car, listening to my wife defend the man who'd been sabotaging my business on her lover's orders. "Maybe Trevor should be more careful about who he picks fights with," I said finally. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, honey. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. These things have a way of working themselves out." There was a long pause. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. "Ben, are you behind this? The blog article, the harassment?" I almost laughed. After months of lies and manipulation, she was finally asking direct questions. Too bad it was far too late for honesty. "Behind what? I've been working at the coffee shop all day, trying to deal with a sudden influx of fake negative reviews. Someone's been trying to destroy my business. Any idea who might do something like that?" Another pause. "I have to go. Charles wants to see me." "I bet he does. Give Chaz my regards." The line went quiet. I dropped his nickname casually, letting her know that I knew more than she thought. The game was escalating, and Victoria was finally starting to realize she might not be holding the winning hand. I sat in my car for a few more minutes, planning my next move. Trevor would clean up the fake reviews. Fear was an excellent motivator. But Chaz would just find another way to come at me. Time to take the fight directly to him. The recording opportunity came sooner than I'd expected. Victoria announced on Friday that she was having dinner with Sasha at the country club on Saturday night. Girl talk, she called it, but I knew better. Sasha was Victoria's closest friend and biggest enabler. If anyone knew the full extent of my wife's double life, it would be her. Sasha Chen was everything I disliked about Victoria's social circle. A lifestyle influencer with 50,000 Instagram followers, she documented every meal, every outfit, every mundane moment of her carefully curated existence. She was also indiscreet, especially after a few drinks. I called Molly, my neighbor who'd been helping me with odd jobs around the coffee shop. Single mother, sharp wit, and, though I'd never admitted it aloud, someone I'd grown increasingly attracted to as my marriage crumbled. "I need a favor," I told her when she answered. How do you feel about a little social reconnaissance? Depends. Are we talking about your wife again? Victoria's having dinner at the country club tomorrow night. I need someone to accidentally bump into them. Maybe record some conversation. Molly was quiet for a moment. Ben, are you sure about this? Once you start down this road, I'm already on this road. The question is whether I'm walking it alone or with backup. She sighed. What do you need me to do? Saturday evening, Molly positioned herself at the country club bar, nursing a martini and pretending to wait for a date. She'd borrowed an elegant dress from her sister and looked like she belonged among the old money crowd. Meanwhile, I sat in my car in the parking lot, monitoring the audio feed through a small wireless microphone she'd pinned inside her purse. Victoria and Sasha arrived at 7:30, requesting a table on the terrace overlooking the golf course. Perfect. The outdoor seating would make recording easier, and the ambient noise would provide cover for Molly's presence. I listened through my earpiece as they settled in, ordering wine and catching up on gossip. For the first 20 minutes, it was standard social chatter. Then the wine started flowing, and the conversation shifted. So how are things with Charles? Sasha asked, her voice slightly slurred. Still playing house on the yacht? Victoria laughed. It's not playing house. It's an arrangement that works for both of us. He gets companionship. I get access to a lifestyle Ben could never provide. And Ben doesn't suspect anything? Ben's too busy feeling sorry for himself to pay attention. Dan works so hard, but sometimes hard work isn't enough. I'm exploring new opportunities because I have to think about our daughters' futures. That sort of thing. The manipulation was breathtaking. Maya had been systematically destroying my reputation while building sympathy for her own difficult situation. Every person who saw her with Victor Grant would assume she was doing whatever it took to save her family from financial ruin. There's more, Janine continued. She's been asking people for advice about divorce attorneys, hypothetically, of course, just wondering what someone in her position might expect in a settlement. Her position being a devoted wife whose husband's business failures left her no choice but to find alternative income sources. She's been very interested in whether judges look favorably on women who take initiative during marital financial crises. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Maya wasn't just having an affair. She was building a legal strategy. Every meeting with Victor, every dollar he transferred for her consulting services, was being positioned as evidence of her resourcefulness in the face of my supposed inadequacy. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Janine's composure finally cracked. Because I'm tired of watching her manipulate everyone. Because my husband is a good man who works hard for our family. And I can't stand listening to Maya imply that hard-working husbands are somehow failures. And because... She hesitated. Because what? Because Victor Grant approached me last month, at the charity auction, made it very clear that he was interested in expanding his network of female consultants. The implication hit me like voltage through wet hands. He propositioned you. Very subtly, very professionally. But yes, when I turned him down, he mentioned that Maya had been much more open to opportunity. Said I should ask her about the rewards of thinking bigger. So, Victor wasn't just pursuing Maya. He was building a stable of women willing to provide whatever services his money could buy. Maya had convinced herself she was special, that their relationship meant something beyond a business transaction. What do you want me to do with this information? I want you to protect yourself, Janine said. Maya's playing a long game, and she's better at it than you realize. If you're going to fight back, you need to be smarter than she is. After Janine left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, processing everything she'd told me. Maya's strategy was sophisticated: destroy my reputation while building her own narrative, create legal cover for her affair by framing it as financial necessity, then divorce me with public sympathy on her side. But Maya had made one crucial error. She'd assumed I was too stupid or too trusting to figure out her game. Time to prove her wrong. I drove to the office and found Rick reviewing blueprints for next month's projects. The work looked good. Foster Electric was booked solid through the end of the year, with enough profit margin to make any small business owner proud. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Has anyone been asking questions about our finances? Clients, suppliers, anyone in the industry?" Rick looked puzzled. "Not that I know of. Why?" "Maya's been telling people we're struggling, that the business is in trouble." "That's insane. We're having our best year ever." Rick pulled out his laptop, opening our accounting software. "Look at these numbers. Revenue up 30%, profit margins better than they've been since we started. We could buy 2 more work trucks tomorrow and not even feel it." "Can you print those reports?" "All of them. I want documentation of everything." "Dan, what's going on?" I told him about my conversation with Janine, about Maya's systematic campaign to rewrite our financial reality. Rick's expression grew darker with each detail. "She's setting you up," he said finally, "creating a narrative where she's the victim and you're the failure. If she files for divorce, she'll claim she was forced to seek outside income because you couldn't provide." "Exactly. But she made one mistake. She assumed I wouldn't find out until it was too late." Rick grinned, the same expression he'd worn when we were kids, planning elaborate pranks on our older cousins. "What do you need?" "Documentation. Everything. Financial records, client testimonials, proof that Foster Electric is thriving. If Maya wants to play the victim, she's going to have to explain why she was lying about our success." We spent the next 2 hours compiling evidence. Bank statements showing steady growth, client contracts worth hundreds of thousands, awards and certifications that proved Foster Electric's reputation in the industry. I want to talk today about something that affects all of us, the importance of honesty in our community relationships. I clicked to my first slide, which showed statistics about trust in small communities. Standard presentation fare, nothing threatening. "We live in a connected world where information travels fast," I continued, "where private conversations can become public knowledge, where the things we say when we think nobody's listening can define who we really are." Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was starting to sense where this might be heading. "For example," I said, clicking to the next slide, "consider how we talk about our most important relationships, our marriages, our friendships, our business partnerships." The next slide was titled, "Case Study, When Private Becomes Public." Sometimes, people say things in private that reveal their true character, things they would never say if they knew others were listening. I clicked again, and the audio player appeared on screen. Let's listen to an actual conversation recorded this past weekend at this very club. Victoria's voice filled the room, crystal clear through the sound system. "It's an arrangement that works for both of us. He gets companionship. I get access to a lifestyle Ben could never provide." The room went completely silent. Victoria's face turned white, then red, then white again. I let the audio continue. Her dismissive comments about our marriage, her plans to leave me for Charles, Sasha's encouraging laughter. The audience was transfixed. This was better than any soap opera, real drama involving people they knew personally. When the audio finished, I clicked to my final slide. The importance of integrity. "As you can see," I said calmly, "the things we say in private reveal who we really are. And in a community like ours, private conversations have a way of becoming public knowledge." Victoria stood up abruptly, knocking over her water glass. This is illegal. You can't record people without permission." "Actually," I replied, "in New York State, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. Since my representative was present and consenting, the recording is perfectly legal." Sasha was frantically looking around the room, realizing that her social media empire could crumble if this story spread. Several people were already pulling out their phones, probably posting about the drama unfolding in real time. The real question, I continued, is whether we want to live in a community where this kind of deception is acceptable, where married people openly plan to abandon their spouses for wealthier partners, where so-called friends enable and encourage betrayal. Victoria was backing toward the exit, but the damage was done. Everyone in the room had heard her true feelings about our marriage and her plans for the future. Her carefully maintained image as a loving wife and respected community member was in ruins. Thank you for your attention, I concluded. And remember, in a small community, integrity isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity. As I packed up my equipment, I could hear the buzz of conversation throughout the room. Victoria and Sasha had fled, but their words would follow them everywhere in this gossip-driven town. My phone buzzed with a text from Doc. Just saw the video on Facebook. Someone live-streamed your presentation. It's already got 200 shares. I smiled. In the age of social media, public humiliation traveled at the speed of light. Victoria's world was crumbling, and she'd provided the wrecking ball herself. Victoria didn't come home Tuesday night, or Wednesday. By Thursday morning, I was starting to wonder if she'd already fled to Charles's penthouse, but then Ray called with intelligence from the bartender network. She's been staying at the Marriott downtown, he reported. Drinking heavily, crying, making phone calls to lawyers. Word is she's planning some kind of legal action against you. Let her try. Everything I did was perfectly legal. Maybe, but rich people don't always play by legal rules. Watch your back. Ray's warning proved prescient. That afternoon, as I was closing the coffee shop, Trevor Walsh appeared at my front door. But this wasn't the scared kid I'd confronted in the parking garage. This Trevor looked confident, backed by expensive legal advice. "Mr. Mallory," he said, "I'm here to serve you with a cease and desist order." He handed me official-looking papers. Charles Loring's legal team was demanding that I stop harassing their client and his employees, remove all defamatory content from social media, and pay damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. "Interesting," I said, scanning the document. "Your boss thinks he can lawyer his way out of this. Mr. Loring is prepared to take this as far as necessary. Maya's affair, her financial deceptions, her systematic campaign to destroy my reputation while building legal cover for divorce." Mike listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes in the small notebook he always carried. "She's good," he said finally. "This isn't amateur hour. She's building a case like she's got legal advice. Janine mentioned she's been asking about divorce attorneys. Smart Money says she's already retained one. Probably been planning this for months." Mike flipped through his notes. "But she made mistakes. The Elite Connections profile, the hotel receipts, the inconsistencies between her public story and your actual finances. If you document everything properly, you can prove she's been lying." "How do I do that without breaking any laws?" Mike smiled grimly. "Very carefully, but you've got advantages she doesn't realize. Joint bank accounts, shared credit cards, legal access to financial records. She's been sloppy about covering her digital tracks." We spent the next hour planning a systematic approach to evidence gathering. Mike couldn't officially help, but he could advise me on proper documentation procedures, chain of custody, and legal boundaries. "One more thing," he said as he prepared to leave. "Be prepared for escalation. When people realize their carefully laid plans are falling apart, they get desperate. Desperate people make bad decisions." After Mike left, I got to work. First stop, our shared credit card statements. Maya had been careful about using cash for some expenses, but she'd charged others to our joint accounts, probably figuring I never looked at the detailed statements. She was wrong. 3 months of charges at the Riverside Hotel, always the same room rate, always on days when Maya claimed to be in meetings, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, charged on evenings when she'd told me she was having coffee with friends. A jewelry store purchase for $2,000 made the day after one of her longer business trips. I photographed every receipt, every statement, every charge that contradicted Maya's supposed schedule. The paper trail was damning, but it was also sad. This was my marriage reduced to evidence, 20 years of partnership dissolved into documentation of deception. My phone rang. Maya, calling from Chicago. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to let you know I arrived safely. How's the meeting going?" "Really well. Victor thinks there's tremendous potential for collaboration." Victor. She'd used his name without thinking, probably because she was standing next to him. The slip confirmed what I already knew, but it still hit like a physical blow. "That's great, sweetheart. I hope it works out." "It will. I can feel it. This could be the answer to all our problems. Our problems, the ones she'd created by lying to everyone about our financial situation." After Maya hung up, I continued my investigation. Her laptop revealed more than she'd probably intended to leave accessible. Browser history, showing searches for divorce attorneys, property valuation websites, and something called How to Protect Assets During Marital Dissolution. The most damaging discovery was a draft email in her saved folder, apparently intended for her attorney but never sent. "Dan remains unaware of the extent of my consulting income. Victor has been generous with compensation, and I've been careful to frame it as necessity rather than choice. The narrative of financial distress should play well in court, especially given Dan's blue-collar background. Judges tend to be sympathetic to women who show initiative during marital financial crises." I read the email 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of calculation. Maya hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been conducting a systematic campaign to position herself advantageously for divorce proceedings. Every lie, every manipulation, every carefully crafted story about our financial struggles was designed to maximize her settlement while minimizing mine. The phrase blue-collar background particularly stung. Maya had known exactly who I was when she married me. She'd claimed to love my work ethic, my honesty, my commitment to building something real with my hands. Now she was using those same qualities as weapons against me. I printed the email and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I did something that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. I opened a separate bank account and transferred half our savings. If Maya was planning to claim financial distress, she was about to discover what actual financial pressure felt like. That afternoon, I drove to Foster Electric's office and found Rick training our newest apprentice on proper wire stripping techniques. The sight of honest work being passed from one generation to the next provided a brief respite from the emotional chaos at home. "How's the investigation going?" Rick asked when we had privacy. "Better than expected. Maya's been documenting her own deceptions." I showed him photos of the credit card statements and the draft email. Rick whistled low. "She really thought you'd never figure it out. She thinks I'm stupid, just a blue-collar guy who wouldn't understand her sophisticated games. Her loss. What's the next move?" I'd been thinking about that all day. Maya expected me to react emotionally, to confront her directly and give her the opportunity to play victim. She was counting on me to be the stereotypical betrayed husband, angry, irrational, easy to dismiss. "I'm going to give her exactly what she wants," I said. "A chance to prove how smart she thinks she is." That evening, I prepared for Maya's return with the same methodical approach I used for complex electrical installations. Every wire had to be in the right place, every connection had to be perfect, every component had to serve its intended function. Maya came home around 10 p.m., glowing with the satisfaction of what she clearly considered a successful trip. "Chicago was amazing," she said, settling onto the couch with a glass of wine. "Victor introduced me to some incredible people, real movers and shakers." "Sounds like it went well." "Better than well. I think I'm finally finding my place in the business world. It's exciting to be around people who think big, who aren't limited by small-town thinking." Small-town thinking. Another subtle insult. Another way of diminishing everything we'd built together. "I'm happy for you. I said, and meant it. Maya's happiness was about to become very expensive for her. There might be more travel coming up. This is just the beginning. Whatever you need to do, I support your success. Maya smiled, probably thinking her performance was working perfectly. She had no idea that her phone calls were being documented, her expenses were being tracked, and her carefully constructed lies were being systematically dismantled. As she headed upstairs to shower off the scent of her Chicago adventure, I added one final note to my evidence file. Subject continues to believe her deceptions are undetected. Confidence level appears high. Recommend continued surveillance. Tomorrow, Maya would probably start planning her next move in what she thought was a one-sided game. She was about to discover that her opponent had been playing by different rules all along. After all, the first thing you learn in electrical work is that every circuit has two sides. Maya had been focused on her own connections while ignoring mine. Time to show her what happened when someone finally flipped the switch. Maya's confidence was becoming reckless. Over the next week, she barely bothered to maintain her cover stories. Meetings became overnight trips. Networking events required designer dresses that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her Instagram account transformed into a showcase of luxury experiences that supposedly demonstrated her business success. The most galling part was how she'd started treating me like a roommate who occasionally contributed to household expenses. Polite, distant, slightly condescending when she bothered to acknowledge me at all. "Dan, I need to talk to you about something," she said Thursday morning over coffee. "I think we should consider couples counseling." I nearly choked on my coffee. Counseling? I've been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship, about how we've grown in different directions. Maya's voice carried the practiced tone of someone who'd rehearsed this conversation. "I think we need professional help to figure out if we can bridge the gap between where we are and where we want to be." The manipulation was breathtaking. Maya was setting up counseling as evidence that she'd tried to save our marriage before pursuing divorce. Another piece of her legal strategy, another way to position herself as the reasonable partner who'd exhausted all options. "What kind of gap are you talking about?" "Ambition, Dan. Vision. I'm building something bigger than myself, and sometimes I feel like you don't understand what that means." Building something bigger. With Victor Grant's money and her willingness to provide whatever services he required. "I understand more than you think," I said. "But sure, let's try counseling. I'm willing to work on our relationship." Maya looked surprised, probably because she'd expected resistance. Her plan required me to be the unreasonable partner, the one who refused help. "Really? You'd be open to that?" "Of course. Our marriage is worth fighting for." That afternoon, I met with Jennifer Walsh at her husband's law office. Tom Walsh was one of the best family attorneys in the state, and Jennifer had convinced him to give me an informal consultation. April had built her life on appearances and social connections. Now that her reputation was destroyed, those connections were evaporating like morning fog. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the old pier at sunset. Come alone." I showed the message to Carla, who was sitting at the other end of the bar. "Sounds dramatic," she said. "Want some backup?" "I think I can handle one desperate ex-wife, but keep your phone handy, just in case." As the sun began to set, I drove to the old pier at the north end of town. It was a lonely spot, abandoned when the new marina was built, frequented now only by teenagers and people who wanted privacy for difficult conversations. April was waiting for me, sitting on a weathered bench and staring out at the water. She looked exhausted, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who'd left for her creative retreat a week ago. "Thank you for coming," she said without turning around. I sat down beside her, maintaining careful distance. "What do you want, April?" "I want to understand why you destroyed everything. We could have worked this out privately, gone to counseling, found a way forward. Instead, You chose to humiliate me in public. I chose to tell the truth. You're the one who decided it was humiliating. She finally looked at me, and I saw genuine confusion in her eyes. But why, Jack? Why did you have to be so cruel? It was a fair question, and I considered it carefully before answering. Because you didn't just cheat on me, April. You dismissed me. You treated our marriage like a rough draft that could be discarded when you found something better. You stole money from our accounts and festival funds. You planned to abandon everything we built together without even the courtesy of an honest conversation. I was going to tell you when. After you'd moved to New York with John, after you'd established your new life, you were going to leave me a note, maybe send a text from the airport? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. John's gone, she said finally. Took the first flight out of Portland this morning, left me to deal with the mess alone. Shocking. A man who makes a career of ruining marriages turned out to be unreliable. The gallery fired me. The festival committee is pressing charges. My parents won't return my calls. I have nowhere to go, Jack. I felt a flicker of the old sympathy, the instinct to protect and provide that had defined our marriage. But then I remembered her text messages, her casual cruelty, her plan to discard me like an outdated manuscript. You made your choices, April. Now you get to live with the consequences. So, that's it? 7 years of marriage and you're just walking away? You walked away first. I'm just not following you anymore. I stood to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Please, Jack. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still your wife. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then at her face. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd married, young, ambitious, full of dreams we'd planned to pursue together. But I also saw the woman who'd betrayed those dreams, who'd chosen excitement over commitment, who'd treated our life together as something to be escaped rather than cherished. It means I'll make sure you have a good lawyer, I said gently. And I'll testify truthfully if asked. But we're done, April. We've been done since the moment you decided I wasn't worth your honesty. I walked back to my car, leaving her alone on the pier with the gathering darkness and the weight of her choices. In the rearview mirror, I could see her silhouette against the fading light, a figure from a story that had finally reached its inevitable conclusion. Some endings aren't happy, but they can still be right. Tuesday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was in my workshop, carefully repairing the binding on a 1920s poetry collection, when the doorbell rang insistently. Through the window, I saw a sleek black sedan with New York plates parked in my driveway. The man at my door was tall, expensively dressed, and radiated the kind of quiet authority that comes with serious money. Behind him stood a younger woman with a tablet and the efficient demeanor of a high-level assistant. Mr. Halden, I'm Richard Blackwood, John Sterling's publisher. This is my associate, Ms. Chen. We'd like to speak with you about the recent difficulties. I invited them into my living room, curious about this development. Blackwood settled into April's former chair like he owned it, while Ms. Chen positioned herself to take notes. Mr. Halden, I'll be direct. John Sterling is one of our most valuable authors. Maya's been telling people that Foster Electric is having problems, but I thought you should see the real numbers. I showed them screenshots of our financial reports, our recent contracts, our business awards. The women studied the information with growing confusion. I don't understand, Patricia said. Maya told us you were behind on your mortgage. We refinanced last year to get a better rate, but we're ahead on payments. Maya might have misunderstood the paperwork. She said the business was struggling to compete with larger contractors. We just landed our biggest contract ever, booked solid through next year. The women were processing this information, realizing that Maya's entire narrative about our financial distress was fiction. I could see them recalculating every conversation they'd had with her, every piece of sympathy they'd offered. Why would Maya tell us things were difficult if they weren't? Janine asked. I honestly don't know. Maybe she felt like our success wasn't exciting enough for her business networking goals. Maybe she thought people would be more supportive if they believed she was overcoming challenges. I left the coffee shop knowing that Maya's reputation management campaign was about to backfire spectacularly. By Sunday, every woman in her social circle would be questioning everything she'd told them. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Detective Mike Rains knocked on my door around 8 p.m., looking official. "Got a minute?" he asked. "There's something you should know." We sat in my kitchen while Mike consulted his notebook. "I did some checking on Victor Grant," he said. "Turns out he's been investigated twice for financial improprieties. Nothing that stuck, but there's a pattern. He targets married women, provides them with expensive lifestyles in exchange for various services, then moves on when situations get complicated." Various services? Business consulting, social introductions, and whatever else his money can buy. The man's got a system. He's particularly attracted to women who feel underappreciated in their current situations. Maya fit that profile perfectly. "There's more," Mike continued. "Grant's been married 3 times. Each divorce was messy, expensive, and involved accusations of manipulation and financial deception. His ex-wives claim he encouraged them to lie about their circumstances to justify their relationships with him. So this isn't Maya's first rodeo. It's his." "Exactly. Your wife thinks she's playing Victor Grant, but he's been playing this game a lot longer than she has." Sunday evening, Maya returned from her mountain retreat glowing with satisfaction and carrying shopping bags from stores I couldn't afford. "How was the strategic planning?" I asked. "Incredible. Victor introduced me to people who think on a completely different level. I feel like I'm finally discovering what I'm capable of." "Learn anything useful?" "So much. Victor thinks I should consider expanding my consulting practice nationally. He's willing to provide startup capital and strategic guidance." Startup capital. Victor was offering to set Maya up in business, probably in exchange for exclusive access to her services. She thought she was getting a business opportunity. He was buying a more permanent arrangement. That sounds like a big commitment. The biggest opportunities require the biggest commitments, Dan. Victor says successful people understand that. "What does that mean for us, for our family?" Maya's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. "It means we need to have some serious conversations about our future, about whether we want the same things." There it was. The setup for her exit strategy, delivered with the same corporate double-speak she'd been practicing for months. "I want whatever makes you happy," I said. "I'm glad you feel that way, because I think some changes might be necessary." Maya headed upstairs to unpack, probably to call Victor and report on her successful performance. She had no idea that her weekend retreat had been thoroughly documented, that her social circle was questioning her honesty, or that her husband had spent the weekend building a case that would destroy her carefully constructed narrative. Tomorrow, Maya would probably start implementing whatever exit strategy she and Victor had planned during their romantic getaway. She was about to discover that some circuits have built-in overload protection. When too much current flows through a system, something has to give. Monday morning brought Maya's endgame into sharp focus. She announced over breakfast that she'd be meeting with a counselor that afternoon, alone, initially, to prepare for our joint sessions. "Dr. Rebecca Martinez comes highly recommended," Maya said, checking her phone while talking. "She specializes in couples who've grown apart due to different life goals." Different life goals. Maya's euphemism for wanting a richer husband. "Sounds thorough." "She is. Victor recommended her. Apparently she helped him through his last divorce." The slip was so casual I almost missed it. Victor had recommended a counselor who'd helped him divorce his previous wife. Maya was using the same professional who'd guided her lover through dissolving his last marriage. "That's convenient," I said. "It's practical, Dan. Why not learn from people who've successfully navigated similar transitions?" similar transitions. Maya couldn't even say the word divorce, but she was already planning the process with Victor's experienced guidance. After Maya left for her solo counseling session, I called Tom Walsh. "She's accelerating the timeline," I told him. "Using Victor's divorce counselor talking about transitions. I think she's preparing to file." "Then it's time to move. How much evidence do you have?" "Enough to prove she's been lying about everything. The affair, our finances, her business consulting story, all documented." "Good. I'm filing a motion for temporary separation today, citing adultery and financial deception. We'll request exclusive use of the marital home and primary custody of the girls pending full proceedings." "Will it work? With your evidence?" "Maya's going to have a very bad day." That afternoon, while Maya was in her counseling session, I picked up Ella and Sophie from school and took them for ice cream. They deserved to hear about the impending changes from me, not from lawyers or gossip. "Your mom and I are having some problems," I told them, as we sat in our favorite booth at the local ice cream shop. "We know, Dad," Ella said quietly. "Mom's been different lately. Distant." "She's been lying to us," Sophie added with the brutal honesty of a 13-year-old. "About where she goes, who she's with. We're not stupid." The conversation was heartbreaking but necessary. The girls were smart enough to understand that their parents' marriage was ending, mature enough to handle the truth about why. "Where will we live?" Ella asked. "With me, in our house. Your mom will probably get her own place, but you'll see her regularly." "Will she be happier?" Sophie's question caught me off guard. "I think she'll be exactly as happy as she chooses to be." That evening, Maya returned from counseling with a folder full of paperwork and a determined expression. "Dr. Martinez thinks we should start with individual assessments," she said, settling onto the couch with her usual theatrical precision. "She wants to understand our individual goals before we work on relationship goals." "What did you tell her about your individual goals?" "That I'm finally discovering my potential, that I've been held back by limiting beliefs about what's possible for someone in my situation." Limiting beliefs. Maya had fully adopted Victor's corporate vocabulary, speaking like a motivational seminar instead of a wife and mother. What about family goals? The girls' needs? The girls need a mother who's fulfilled and successful. They need to see that women can think bigger than traditional limitations. Traditional limitations like marriage vows and financial honesty. "Dr. Martinez wants to meet with you Thursday," Maya continued. "She's very interested in understanding your perspective on our relationship dynamics." "I'm sure she is." Maya smiled, probably thinking her strategy was working perfectly. She had no idea that Dr. Martinez would be receiving a comprehensive file of evidence before their meeting, or that her role in Maya's deception would become part of the legal record. Tuesday brought the first crack in Maya's confidence. Janine called me around noon, sounding frantic. "Dan, you need to know what's happening. Maya's story is falling apart." Apparently, Patricia had done her own research after our coffee shop conversation. She'd contacted other business owners in town, asking about Foster Electric's reputation and financial stability. Every response contradicted Maya's narrative of struggling business and financial distress. "Word is spreading," Janine continued. "People are realizing Maya's been lying about your situation. They're asking why she'd make up stories about financial problems." "What's Maya saying?" "She's trying to control the damage, claiming there were misunderstandings, that people misinterpreted her concerns about future planning. But it's not working. Too many people heard too many specific claims." By Wednesday, Maya's social media presence had shifted dramatically. Gone were the subtle implications about financial struggle. Instead, she was posting inspirational quotes about personal growth and discovering your authentic self. The desperation was showing. Thursday morning brought the legal papers. Maya was served with divorce documents while having coffee with her remaining friends at the upscale cafe where she'd built her network of sympathizers. According to Janine, who witnessed the scene, Maya's reaction was spectacular. She went completely pale, Janine reported via text. Started shouting about how this was all a mistake, how she was trying to save the marriage through counseling, made a huge scene. The papers detailed everything: adultery, financial deception, systematic lying about marital circumstances. Maya's carefully constructed victim narrative was being dismantled in the most public way possible. That afternoon, Maya burst into Foster Electric's office like a storm system, demanding to see me immediately. "How could you do this?" she screamed, waving the legal papers. "I was trying to save our marriage!" Rick and our employees tried to look busy while obviously listening to every word. "You were trying to save your reputation," I said calmly. "There's a difference. I never cheated on you. Victor is a business mentor. Maya, I have photos of you at the Riverside Hotel. I have your Elite Connections profile. I have bank records showing payments from Victor for services that had nothing to do with business consulting." Maya's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally something that might have been fear. "You've been spying on me. I've been paying attention, something I should have done months ago. This is all a misunderstanding. Victor and I have a professional relationship. Professional relationships don't usually involve weekend retreats at couples resorts." Maya realized she was cornered, that her lies were documented and her strategy had failed. The woman who'd spent months manipulating everyone around her was finally facing someone who couldn't be manipulated. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to stop lying. To me, to the girls, to everyone who trusted you. I want you to acknowledge what you've done and face the consequences honestly. And if I don't? Then you'll face them dishonestly, which won't change the outcome but will make everything worse for everyone involved." Maya left without another word, probably to call Victor and Dr. Martinez and whoever else was helping her navigate this disaster. That evening, the girls and I ordered pizza and watched a movie, something we hadn't done as a family in months. The house felt lighter without Maya's constant performance, her endless calculations about image and opportunity. "Dad," Ella said during a commercial break, "are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in a long time." "Good," Sophie added. "We were worried you didn't know what was happening." Smart girls. They'd been watching their mother's transformation, waiting to see if their father would figure out the truth. Friday brought Maya's final gambit. She showed up at the house with Victor Grant in tow, both of them dressed like they were heading to a board meeting. "Dan, I'd like you to meet Victor," Maya said with forced cheerfulness. "He's offered to help mediate our situation." Victor was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that came from never facing real consequences for bad behavior. "Dan, I've heard so much about you," Victor said, extending his hand. "Maya speaks of you with such respect." I didn't shake his hand. I'm sure she does. Probably the same way she spoke about her financial situation. Victor's smile faltered slightly. "I think there might be some misunderstandings about Maya's consulting work." "No misunderstanding. I know exactly what kind of consulting she's been doing." Maya jumped in, trying to control the conversation. "Victor thinks we could work out an arrangement that benefits everyone. A civilized separation that protects the girls and preserves everyone's dignity." "What kind of arrangement?" Victor recovered his composure, switching into what was probably his standard negotiation mode. "Maya's told me about Foster Electric's success, impressive operation. With the right investment partner, you could expand significantly." The offer was breathtaking in its audacity. Victor was proposing to buy me off, to provide business investment in exchange for a quiet divorce that wouldn't damage his or Maya's reputations. "Let me make sure I understand," I said. "You want to pay me to pretend my wife wasn't having an affair with you. I want to help everyone move forward productively, by pretending the last 6 months didn't happen, by focusing on solutions rather than problems." I looked at Maya, who was watching this negotiation with desperate hope. She still thought she could manipulate the situation, still believed her lies could be transformed into acceptable truths through the right financial arrangement. "Here's my counteroffer," I said. "You both leave my house right now, and I don't call Detective Rains to report trespassing." Victor's corporate mask slipped completely. "You're making a mistake, Dan. Maya and I are offering you a generous solution to a difficult situation." "The situation isn't difficult. It's simple. My wife had an affair, lied about our finances, and tried to manipulate everyone around her. Now she's facing the consequences. This doesn't have to be ugly. It already is ugly. You made it ugly when you decided to pursue a married woman. Maya made it ugly when she decided to lie to everyone who trusted her. I'm just refusing to pretend otherwise." Victor and Maya left without another word, probably to plan their next strategy. But they were out of moves. The evidence was documented, the legal proceedings were underway, and Maya's reputation was already destroyed. Saturday morning, I woke up in my own house, surrounded by the life I'd built through 20 years of honest work. The girls were making pancakes in the kitchen, arguing about toppings with the comfortable familiarity of children who felt secure in their home. Maya's BMW was gone from the driveway. According to the girls, she'd packed several suitcases the night before and left without saying goodbye. "She'll be back," Ella said, but she didn't sound convinced. "Maybe," I said, "but either way, we'll be fine." And we would be. Foster Electric was thriving, our house was paid for, and the girls were old enough to understand that their mother's choices weren't their fault or their responsibility. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. Maya and I have resources you can't imagine." I showed the message to Mike Rains when he stopped by for coffee. "Harassment," he said immediately. "Want me to pay Mr. Grant a visit?" "Not yet, but keep the option open." Maya had chosen her path, and Victor had chosen his. They could face the consequences together, just like they'd created the problems together. I deleted the threatening text and got back to the business of living honestly. After all, the most important thing about electrical work isn't the complexity of the system. It's making sure every connection is solid and true. Some people never learn that lesson, but some of us never forget it.